Cassie, I believe we're still waiting for a quorum. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have you and Deb and Jay and Julie are here.
Okay.
Here comes Dan. I'm just letting him in now. And then Amy and Mike, I'm still waiting for, but I didn't get any notification from either of them that they weren't going to come.
Let's
We've got Dan, we might have a quorum.
we do have a quorum. Give it another minute or so. Give folks a chance to connect.
I'm having video problems again. I'm going to try to figure that out, but I'm here.
Okay, Cassie, I think we're a full board except Michael at this time. So given how long the recent meetings have been, I don't see any reason to delay this further.
I agree.
All right, so pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found below. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the meeting ends abruptly, the meeting will not be restarted and all agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting. I will now call to order the May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items?
I have not received any.
Just, Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering. Cassie, I sent an email with a request for a continuation of an order of conditions for Lepin properties located on O'Neill Street, and requested that it be brought up at your meeting on the 14th of June.
That's right. Yeah, the extension request for the Lepin properties order of conditions. I received that.
Okay.
And I know that it expires in July, correct?
Correct. Yes, it does.
Yeah, so I don't think there should be any reason I can't have that on the agenda for the 14th meeting. Looked complete, the request to me, so.
Good.
Okay.
All righty, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Okay. Any other items before we move on? Hearing none. Public hearings and meetings. Public meeting, request for determination of applicability filed by the City of Easthampton for expansion of existing concrete pad on Williston Avenue, no map, lot number. Is there anyone from the city regarding this item?
Yeah, Pascalina was kind enough to join us to help explain this, and I wanted to just, explain to the commission too that this was a RDA that we did recently, not too long. I guess it was in 2020 technically. It was for a concrete pad and sidewalk along Williston Ave there, and this is in addition to that. So that work received a negative determination at that time. This is a new addition to that of just kind of expanding one part of the concrete pad so that it can accommodate and actually let me share my screen here with this picture. I think is helpful. I did I have site visit pictures today, but this image that Jeff Bagg was able to make is the most helpful. Yeah, they want to put a bike rack on there, and it's I don't know if you're all familiar with the zip code bike rack. In order to accommodate that, it just needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So this is the best picture of it. This is the existing conditions, as you can see, and then they want to expand it out 2 feet by 10 feet, and then they're going to bump out the erosion controls, use the same controls as they did for the original work. And yeah, that is the RDA in question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
quickly introduce myself. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Pasqualina Azzarello. I'm the City Arts Coordinator for the City of Easthampton, and I work in the Planning Department. My desk is in Cassie's video right there. And yeah, I'm here to answer any questions any of you may have.
Thank you. And just so the commission and others understand, the reason the city is back before us with this seemingly minor modification is because determinations of applicability are snapshots in time, and there's no administrative process in the regulations or any policies that allows for modifications after the fact. So that's why this is before the commission tonight, is my understanding. Cassie, is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I spoke with DEP about it, and yeah, you can't amend in order a request for determination, a determination that has been issued, even though they're good for 3 years. So this is just, they needed a new one. So here you are.
Right. We can't amend and we can't extend determinations. So are there any questions from members of the commission? No. Are there any questions from members of the public in attendance? Okay. Cassie, how was the previous determination phrased? Was it in...
Let me get the exact wording. I'm just gonna stop my share. So previously, we issued a negative determination type 3. And then the only special conditions were the commission shall be contacted 48 hours before the start of work to inspect erosion controls, and shall be notified upon completion of the work to inspect the site stability before erosion controls are removed.
Thank you. Would anyone care to, with that in mind, would anyone care to make a motion?
Motion to issue a negative determination type 3 with the same condition that we had previously for the pre-construction inspection of the erosion controls.
I'll second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August,
Aye.
Busa,
Aye.
Buttrick,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Teffer,
Aye.
Whittemore, not present. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask one question?
Of course.
Okay, so based on what I just heard, it sounds like there has to be a 48-hour notice to when it would be poured. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we've been working very closely with John Mason from Parks and Rec regarding this, and he was planning to do the pour this coming Wednesday morning.
Okay, so is this your notice?
This is my notice.
Okay.
Is
Cassie,
that
take
okay
the
with you all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just let me know, I'll just, once the erosion controls are set in the right place, I'll come out and take a look, snap some pictures and be like, they're in place and it's good, it'll be good to go.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Good night.
All right, moving on. I guess before we do this, Cassie, I have a logistical question
Sure.
regarding the next item and item 4A. Do we need to address item 4A before we can address item 3B?
So basically the way we were gonna do it is that there would be the discussion for 3B, so that we get to a point where the applicant feels confident that it's probably going to get,
Okay,
and then we get continued before any issuance. Yeah, so,
excellent. All right,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
So,
Deb has something she'd like to add.
yes, thank you.
I have to recuse myself from 3B and 4A.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so moving on, item 3B, public hearing, notice of intent filed by GEI Consultants on behalf of Cypress Creek Renewables at 50 Florence Road, map 115, lot 2 and 5 for a new large-scale solar project, Mass DEP file number 151314. Is there anyone here to speak for this? And if so, please introduce yourselves.
Yes, hi, I'm Brad Saunders. I'm with GEI Consultants and representing Beacon Solar LLC on this project. And we have been in touch with Cassie over the last week. We went out and had a site visit, was it last Monday? And we're in the process of looking at another design in terms of laying out the solar panels. There should be some minor changes, but we don't really want to take up the commission's time this evening to go over a plan that's going to be changing again a little bit. So we wanted to request a continuation of the hearing until June 14th, please.
Okay. So without further discussion, is there a motion to continue this hearing till June 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m.?
A motion to continue to June 14th at 6 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August, recused, Busa,
Aye.
Buttrick,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Teffer,
Aye.
Whittemore, not present. Motion carries. Thank you.
Melissa, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Administratively, and maybe this is where you were going a minute ago, but administratively, can we consider the new NOI before the existing order is closed out?
I believe we can, we just can't act on it.
Okay.
So we must, in order for a new order of conditions to be considered or acted upon, that's when we would have to ensure that the previous order had been closed out.
And I've confirmed that with DEP as well.
Yeah,
That's
I
okay.
think the hesitation is giving up all orders in the event that there was some
Right.
new consideration. So, thank you. All right, so we will move on to item 3C, public hearing continued from April 26th. Notice of intent filed by Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering, Inc. on behalf of David Lepin at Ferry Street, Duda Drive, map 135, lot 29, for construction of a new single-family home and associated driveway. Mass DEP file number 151312. Is there anyone representing this item this evening?
Yes, my name's Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering. Dan Nitschke from GZA will be joining us shortly for this application. He's joining now. He just texted me. So based on our last meeting that we had, the request was that we do an updated wetland and riverfront delineation. So GZA was hired to do that work. and their findings and report have been submitted to the commission. In our discussions with Dan Nitschke from GZA, we have modified the riverfront area to start at wetland flag or riverfront flag A18 as shown on the plans, and I can share them, or Cassie or
Mark, can you share your screen?
sure I can if you
Thank
allow
you.
me, Cassie. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, you should have that power now.
Okay. Okay, 1 second. Can everyone see this? Oh, wait a minute. Bear with me 1 second. I gotta, come on. There you go. So based on conversations with Dan and Mark Stenson at DEP, the limits of the riverfront area have been modified as shown in this, excuse me, as shown on this revised plan, which is dated the 20th. And it starts at the northerly end of the old pond as shown on the USGS map. So here's the old farm pond that's shown on the USGS map. So the riverfront area starts from that outlet control structure. There's a 100-foot long culvert that runs through and discharges the intermittent stream up gradient from that on the property itself. In the regulations, it says that you have to do a circle around from the end of it. So this plan now shows that the riverfront area encompasses around in this fashion whatsoever on the property itself. So the revised plans have been modified to show that, along with Dan's wetland delineation and update for the property itself, and Dan can speak to that directly and what his findings are. But what we've also done is move the proposed house and the turnaround for the driveway outside of the riverfront area. So we've moved it to the west. The property in itself has a total of 237,209 square feet of riverfront area on it, going all the way out to Ferry Street, which is about 5.4 acres. The proposed work within the riverfront area shown on these plans is 10,604 square feet, which is 5% of the riverfront. And within the regulations, we're allowed up to 10%. So that we're well under that threshold of work within the riverfront area. We wanted to make sure that we moved the house further to the west so that we could minimize the amount of work proposed in the riverfront area. So that the only work in the riverfront would be the driveway and utility connections to the proposed house in itself. Really, this is the only modification to the plan that you have previously seen relative to the new riverfront boundary in the house being relocated. The driveway coming off of Duda Drive has not changed. Within this area, it's within the 100-foot buffer zone. This entire driveway section has not changed whatsoever. As you remember, the house used to be located in this area here. Excuse me. So we submitted both sheet 1, which shows the entire resource area and property going out to Ferry Street, and then a revised sheet number 2 that you're looking at as we speak now. And maybe Dan can speak to his delineation and work on the property.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Mark. So when we went to the property on Saturday on the 8th, we looked at the pond area as well as just up gradient or upstream to get the full delineation of the resource areas that would project jurisdiction into the work zone. So we started over by the detention basin on the southern end along that intermittent stream. And I believe on the documentation provided to the commission, we show the stream stats data that confirms that that is an intermittent stream, despite the fact that local folks believe that it flows a lot. It still doesn't meet the criteria of a perennial stream. Its watershed is too small in size. And so we confirmed the intermittent part, and then we delineated the edge of the old farm pond, essentially as a bordering vegetated wetland bordering on that stream down to the outlet structure. And then we flagged again on the downstream side, the B flagging, which is essentially bank flags, except B4 is really a BVW. There's a hill, there's a seep that's coming out of that slope around flag B4. And so that's, thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
So that's representing more of a bordering vegetated wetland point, but the remaining flags are essentially bank / mean annual high water line for that, since that's a perennial stream going out in that direction. And we provide a data form for flag 15 for the commission's review. So not much different than what Alec McLeod put out there, other than I don't know if he had the drained pond. I'm assuming it was a drained pond at the time, but we had bordering vegetated wetland to that intermittent stream, and then the perennial stream on the outlet end.
Thank you. So with that, we could take questions from the commission. I think we've covered what was asked of us and made the modifications, and we are in compliance with the regulations.
Thank you. Are there questions from any members of the commission before I ask mine?
I had a question.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Mark, at last meeting, I had asked how much disturbance there would be for the driveway. Were you able to come up with that?
Yes. So with the driveway, with the work within the riverfront area, it is 10,604 square feet within the riverfront area. The remaining section, which is within the 100-foot buffer zone, starts up here closer to Duda Drive and comes around the corner, is approximately 1,800 square feet of work in the 100-foot buffer zone for this area, which is outside the 200-foot riverfront area and within the 100-foot buffer zone. So if you round it up, I mean, it's probably around, close to 12,000 square feet total between riverfront and buffer zone.
Mark, does that 10,604 square foot number include all of the disturbance area, or is that a tally of the finished driveway?
No, it's not. That 10,000 square foot is from the erosion control limit line to the property line.
Okay.
So this whole entire area, because we know we're going to disturb soils to install the underground utilities, the sewer and the water line. So it includes this entire section.
And I'm having trouble finding it in the documents online at the moment, but where would we look to find the details of how each of the riverfront area standards is being met?
So within our letter, which I can share with you, Let me share that letter. I should have it here. So these are the performance standards and compliance measures for the entire property. So this is part of the application that was submitted to the commission on the 20th. So we have a general narrative on the site conditions, the project description, the work within the buffer zone, the project design considerations. And then we get into the riverfront area sections and describe the work in those design criterias. And then we go through the standards of A through D being here. So I don't know if you want me to read through those sections or how do you want to handle that?
So Mark, I guess I'm wondering under for no practicable or substantially equivalent economic alternatives. How was the scope of alternatives selected or determined? So I guess what I'm not saying is, the regs are step through the type of activity relative to when the lot was recorded. Is that addressed in this document?
So this piece of property was part of the original farm. So it is prior to the adoption of the Rivers Bill.
But when the lot was, so prior to the farm being subdivided?
So the farm itself, this is part of the original farm. So
Right.
Right.
But when lots were carved out of the farmland and this lot was created in its current configuration, do you know when that was?
To my understanding, if it was part of the original parcel of land, it meets those criteria of being original parcel. Maybe Dan can.
Well, the lot predates the rivers.
Right, but what I'm suggesting or requiring is, my understanding of the regulations designating the date on or before August 1st, 1996 was, right before that, there was no Riverfront Protection Act. This didn't exist as a resource area. But so that if a lot was created prior to that, there wasn't an additional penalty relative to the review of alternatives for work in riverfront area, based on the lack of knowledge that there would be these potential restrictions to consider. If the lot was carved out, created after that, essentially if a homeowner or a property owner through whatever means creates their own hardship, then there's a certain amount of responsibility to understand land use limitations at the time. So that's
right. But I would, sorry, go ahead, Melissa, sorry.
I was saying that's where on or before August 1st, 1996 is significant.
Right. So I would say this lot existed, this lot was a larger lot, even though parts were cut off, but this lot existed prior to 96.
Understood, but if the lot in its current configuration, it's because my understanding is
that
if you had a bigger piece of land, which they did, and I'm not saying this is the case here, this is my theoretical understanding.
Yeah.
If if a developer has a large piece of land where a portion of its riverfront area, and it gets sliced and diced so that they get the maximum number of lots outside of riverfront area, and there are still lots in riverfront area, the creation of those lots in riverfront area doesn't, after that magical date, doesn't carry with it those legacy considerations of being created, existing prior to riverfront.
Well, let's take that one step further. The two ramifications of the two dates are thus. If you're pre-Rivers Act, you get 10% or 5,000 square feet, whichever is greater. If you're post-Rivers Act, you only get the 10%.
Mhm.
So
Oh.
in either case, this lot would meet either way you looked at it, you would meet that standard because it's not over 10%.
Well, that's the percentages, but it's not necessarily the scope of geographic alternatives.
Okay, so so that's where you're heading, is looking at other
I
potential.
don't see how that's
as-
been addressed in this.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. We looked at, and I haven't been involved in the project the whole time. Since I got involved a couple of weeks back, they
Mhm.
looked at the potential of coming in off of Ferry Street, and that's all riverfront area the entire way.
Mhm.
So that would come through land that they currently own. There, I believe, what I think you're referring to, Melissa, is that there's something in the regulations about other land that
Right.
was
looking at
owned,
10
previously
to
owned. Right,
Yeah,
but I
Mark.
believe if I Mark, help me understand that, but aren't all those other lots developed? So it isn't like you can
Correct.
go to any of those previously owned lots.
Well,
Or-
the proposed activity in riverfront area here seems to be the driveway.
Yep.
So
Yes.
was an alternative to the driveway at that location. So
So we did look, Melissa, at an alternative to come in off of Ferry Street.
mhm.
Dan mentioned that alternative, and we have it on the top of the last page of our performance standards and compliance measures. We looked at that in that project description and considerations. Would require, if we did come off of Ferry Street, a bridge crossing of an intermittent stream and wetland area. It also would be completely within the 200-foot riverfront area, and in sections be within the 100-foot riverfront area because of the topography, steep topography out there. And excuse me, excuse me. And it would require removal of existing wooded vegetation. So that we felt that in our narrative on that page, top of the page there, that it would be more detrimental to the resource area, not only for the riverfront area, buffer zone, and intermittent stream to come off of Ferry Street, as well as the cost of coming off of Ferry Street to build a bridge crossing that meets the standards for crossing a stream under the stream crossing standards in the state. So that economically, it's not feasible to come off of Ferry Street and build on this piece of property.
No, I agree with that aspect of it. What I'm getting at with, so under scope of alternatives. So, gosh, this is a horribly formatted section of the regulations, but 1058 for ABC. So for the 1A, let's see, nope, sorry, 2A, B, 1 and 2. So it's, if the lot was recorded on or before August 1st, 1996, the area under consideration for practicable alternatives is limited to the lot for the activities associated with construction or expansion of a single family house. The area under consideration for practicable alternatives is limited to the lot subdivided lots and any adjacent lots formerly or presently owned by the same owner for activities associated with the construction or expansion of a single-family house on a lot recorded after August 1st, 1996. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're fitting, when it comes to riverfront area alternatives, I want to make sure that we're adequately, that the geographic scope of consideration is adequately addressed.
Okay, right. So we feel that we fall under the first category of prior to the adoption. And that we've looked at the option of coming off of Ferry Street. And we do note that in our narrative, in our project design consideration, which we submitted. I can scroll back up to it here.
So to be clear, then that means that this parcel, the individual parcel that we're looking at today, was recorded before 1996.
Correct.
Okay.
It was dated, this parcel was the original part of the original farm, which dated back 3 generations.
Again, I mean, I would like input from other members of the commission and our agent, but that's certainly not I'm not refuting that. What I am suggesting is that is being part of the original lot is exactly what this provision in the regulations was crafted to address. And is there a way to determine that this parcel in its current configuration existed in this configuration prior to 1996?
When did the subdivision take place?
You know that, Mark, when the lots were subdivided?
When the subdivision was, I don't know when, you mean due to drive?
If that's what the subdivision was, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to look at some plan books to give you an answer on that.
I wonder if I could find that on the, while you guys continue your discussion, I'll see if I can find that maybe on the city website.
Cassie, maybe the assessor's property card.
Yeah, yep.
There's one that kind of leapfrogs back through time usually. Maybe that would be a helpful source of information.
Let's see here.
And
I think Melissa's correct that that's the critical factor, is when this lot in its current configuration was first in this configuration.
And so
Well,
Cassie, thank you for looking that up.
Sure.
I
I mean,
have
if you
another
look back, at the deed that Mr. Lepin has for the property, it refers back to the entire farm parcel. Going back in the chain of title for that piece.
But I see what Melissa's saying, Mark, is what's
Yeah.
happened is because the lot, sorry to interrupt, Mark, but because the lot's been subdivided, this configured lot, the date of it, I see what you're saying, Melissa. That makes it important. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing. You have to up to 10, you have % in each category. If we're not going over that 10%, we're not busting or we're not exceeding any particular threshold. But I understand what Melissa's trying to do is she's making sure that the ducks are in a row for the commission to
Sure.
become, we've covered all of our bases for the alternatives. So you still digging, Cassie?
Yeah, I found 2 things for you guys to look at. I'm not sure which one we'll have.
I'll stop
But Mark,
sharing.
but I'm going to throw this in, Mark. Is there any other lot that David sold that's adjacent to this land that someone could drive through to get to this property? I mean, I'm assuming they're all sold.
They're
so
all sold.
They're not available as an alternative.
Correct.
Right, but I believe the way that reads is
It's or formerly owned by the, yeah. And what Melissa's saying is if they've created their own hardship by leaving a lot that is difficult to access, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can
Right.
whatever they
Right.
like.
I don't think this is a case of creating a hardship. I think this is a case of he can't use the other land that's been sold. Those aren't options to him. Those aren't alternatives because they're all used. They're all owned by somebody else.
But I think under the regulations, they were alternatives and he has given them up. And that does not necessarily make it viable.
Right. If this were a vegetated wetland crossing, we would be looking at alternative means of access outside resource area, or with less impact. And that would mean exploring other adjacent lots, potentially for an
Not required by the regulations,
It
Not
depends
for-
on
not
when
for
the
B-
lot was recorded.
not for
That's the
BVW
geographic
specific.
scope of alternatives, excuse me. That's the geographic scope of alternatives.
Yep.
And that's the whole point, is avoiding the impacts. So Cassie found some information, and I'd like her to share that with us so that if we can
Sure.
either put a pin in this or continue the discussion, we can do so.
So I have two things that this is just from the city GIS website. And I'm hoping potentially this could be it, or one other thing to look at. Does this look like this is giving potentially some answers? I know I can see these sale dates up here.
Okay. This could potentially be useful.
And then I can scroll down. There's another page. I don't know, just quickly.
Actually,
I don't think it has much on it that would be helpful to us.
It's on the first page.
Yeah, it's on the first page, and the Duda, Raymond Duda, is Mr. Lepin's father-in-law. And the Dudas ran the farm. So that dates back. We don't have the original one, Kathy, which is the bottom one. There's not a date on that,
Yeah.
which is in deed book 15. Right.
Yeah, I could,
I
I
can-
mean, I can even go on the, if you think this would be helpful, I can go on the registry's website. And we can go from there too. That might have some,
Right, and that's the original Duda farm parcel, which would be in that 1568, page 310.
It's before 90, it's before 91 at some point.
yeah.
Right,
so that answer, yeah.
right.
The other thing, I don't know if this is help, this I think is probably less helpful, is this other card. I think this is just general current parcel information.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think this is.
I think
helpful.
that
This shows the last sale.
series of, yeah.
Right.
I think the previous one has more useful, potentially useful information.
Correct.
So that was, yeah, before, 91 in that next to the last transfer.
And what's the total acreage of the parcel itself? Just so we know if there's some continuity by reference in a deed.
Oh, that should be here. Sorry,
No, it's fine.
it should be listed on here. So I can
You
find,
need to
it's
scroll up
very,
more.
it's very slow to load, unfortunately, as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let me zoom out one more.
It shows the total parcel area is 7.4 acres of land.
thank you, Mark.
It's shown on sheet 1.
Okay. So
Mm.
while Cassie is so graciously reviewing that as part of this conversation, Mark, can you share photographs of the riverfront area where the driveway is proposed?
Cassie has those
Oh, okay.
based on our site visit that we did. And I can look on the registry of deeds site. Cassie, is that book 15?
Yep, it's, so for the very first one, it's 1568/310.
Okay.
I'll keep this up. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'll pull up the pictures, Melissa, and show you. This is from the site visit. Let's see.
That's a very old deed book.
Okay, here we go. All right, so this was from April 21st. And I'm going to, let's see, open the sky. Share my screen. Okay, so where this fire hydrant is right here is the end of the driveway. This fire hydrant is going to be relocated the end. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark or Dan, but yeah, it's going to come through this area, and then It's all
Right.
currently maintained as lawn. Then it's gonna, the fire hydrant is to the right over here. The end of the cul-de-sac is over that way. It comes around straight through this way. That's the riverfront area. So these are kind of jumbled, but the culvert is underneath me and the pond is behind me. The old farm pond is behind me. This is looking straight up. Ferry Street is in the distance. Now we're back over here. So fire hydrant comes down around these trees this way for the driveway. This is looking at the pond area, the BBW that's been identified. The culvert is like over here. This is the riverfront area over here. The behind me is where the driveway would be. To the left is where the house, proposed house is to be. There's a better picture. They were previously growing hops in this area. So that's what these posts are from. This is looking the riverfront area, and the culvert is beneath me and extends behind me to the riverfront area. This is the intermittent stream, very incised. And then you can see the BBW would be in this low area around. This is the pond surrounding the intermittent stream. This is from the pond. It's like the land over the culvert, essentially. You can kind of walk over and then it becomes wooded again. So the intermittent streams over here, the riverfront area, or the continuation of the perennial stream is behind me. Again, driveway comes start over here, down towards this truck, up this way. And then the truck is behind me at this point, that red truck. And basically this tree is the property line of this property. So it's nice, there's these lines in the grass, but basically everything to the right is where this kind of driveway is going to go.
So this is the riverfront area where the driveway is proposed. Just is it all, including the utilities? Is it all limited to the grass, the maintained lawn area, or does it encroach upon the unmanaged area?
Slightly in the unmanaged area. I would say probably about 5 feet or so into the unmanaged area.
So if I have a picture closer, because the riverfront area is probably like over here more, not so much behind me. So let's see if there's a picture that's closer. I think that this is probably all riverfront area. Mark, do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all part of the riverfront area, but it does circle back into that first picture that you were looking at. And the riverfront area probably was just in front of Jay when he was standing there looking in that previous picture.
Oh, here we go. So like probably
That
this
one.
whole.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a portion of the, we believe, we didn't locate it, but a portion of the abutter's shed and driveway is within the riverfront area. Very slightly.
Okay, so bear with me as I step through this.
Yep.
So I guess can you talk about the comment in the, your statement regarding alteration of vegetation within the first 100 feet? It seems like there will be alteration. I'm not grading the quality of the vegetation, but I'm not calling the maintained lawn vegetation, but I'm looking at this and you're saying that there will be some encroachment there. Is that
not in the 100 feet? I was talking about within if you were coming off of Ferry Street, it would require work within the first 100 foot.
right? But I'm looking at your letter, which lays out the performance standard and then the statement of compliance, and here it says no vegetation within 100 feet of the riverfront. And I'm assuming the first 100 feet of riverfront will be disturbed with this project. And I'm seeing some encroachment. And then I'm wondering if.
Can you show the site plan, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, here, I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Just gonna keep this image in your minds. Okay.
I'll share that up. Let me get back to that.
then I'm wondering, kind of on a parallel thought process, does any of the riverfront area within the subject parcel qualify as previously developed or degraded per 1058.5?
The poles could be considered degraded, but I wouldn't go there. And degrade doesn't, going down redevelopment is not what it used to be. So
Right.
I think I'd stay in 58.4.
Okay, so there are no areas of no impervious surfaces from existing structures or pavement, areas absent topsoil, certainly no junkyard or abandoned dumping grounds.
Correct,
within Riverfront.
correct. There's not. Oops, sorry, come on, share that picture, please. All right.
So, yeah.
I don't believe so, Melissa. When we walk the property, there is no areas of
Okay.
that would qualify under that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of erosion, just of the natural erosion of the embankment because of the steep slopes going all the way out to Ferry Street.
Yeah.
But
So Mark,
not
can
that,
you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, not that meets that criteria.
So can you kind of, do you have a scale tool? Can you kind of scale off or approximate where the first 100 feet would be? It's a little atypical because we're in the arc. So I'm trying to visualize off.
Right.
And if that's the case, that concern will be assuaged.
So where's my little scale here? Unfortunately, this is not cooperating with me as far as my scaling tool. I don't believe so. But I don't have my scale is not showing up on my PDF.
Okay. Okay.
So it is I can scale it I got a full-size copy of the plan sitting here in front of me on my
Can you do
desk.
that and then kind of hover over the equivalent
Sure,
points? That would be
Sure.
perfect.
so this is a 20 scale drawing. So the first 100 feet is, so from that control structure, which the riverfront starts from that point to the limit of work line is 110 feet. So we're outside the 100-foot. If you draw a line straight
Okay.
from here to here, it's 110 feet.
Nope, that's what I wanted to understand. Thank you.
Yep. I guess we should have put that in the dimensioning of that, but yes.
Pros and cons of another line on the drawing, that's for sure.
Right.
Okay. So, by the way, are there any other questions from commission members at this time?
So with regard to the 100-foot discussion, we've shown that we're outside of the 100-foot, but I believe there's also a requirement that if there's not 100 feet of intact vegetation, you're asked to expand that to create a 100-foot buffer. Has that been considered?
The first 100 foot is all vegetated, like shown on those pictures that Cassie has. It's either the old farm fields and meadow, or brush. That showed, so it is vegetated.
But it's vegetated with something other than maintained lawn, it's undisturbed?
Correct. It's undisturbed. Some of those pictures, Kathy, further on, when they were showing the poles for the grow area, that's not lawn area. The lawn area really is where the proposed driveway is going to go. Is the maintained lawn area. And that is maintained not by Mr. Lepin, it is maintained by the abutter.
Yeah, I can share my screen again and show those pictures if you
Yeah.
want, Julie, of this kind of that area beyond where the driveway is, beyond the curve of it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta stop sharing. Wake
Oh,
up. Mark.
I didn't know if she wanted me to, yeah, if you guys wanted me to do it, I don't mind to do it.
No, I will stop sharing. I gotta wake up. Okay, sorry.
Okay, okay, hold on. Let's see if I can, I know I got pictures. So I think this is that area, hold on. I think this is that area, if you're seeing,
Correct.
yeah, so the culvert where it goes underground is to my right. This is the, Ferry Street is up ahead and the river, the perennial stream goes up through, we're inside the riverfront area. Let's see if I can get it better.
So that area would be looking back towards the piece of property that runs westerly. So you're looking kind of westerly. So that area is all currently vegetated. It's not lawn, not maintained as lawn area.
Yeah, there's the extent of the maintained lawn is over there to the left.
Right.
That's where that hop growing operation was.
Where all the poles.
Yep. Let me see. I feel like there's a good picture as well that kind of shows the contrast. So this is like the maintained lawn.
And that's where the driveway would be coming, heading kind of north. So you're looking northerly.
The poles are back here, if that makes sense. You can barely see them. Here you can kind of see them. And then the culvert is over here.
Yeah, the old pond.
And
is
the
to
pond.
right.
No, it's confusing. I hopefully this makes sense, Julie.
So that's looking kind of from the corner of the property where the hops were growing to the north and to the east towards the main river. I guess towards B4 flags, I guess would be a best description.
Okay.
So this area is riverfront that we're seeing in the foreground,
Correct.
and it's not mowed at all. This is its natural state.
Correct.
When did they stop doing the hop growing? Do you know, Mark?
Well, the plants are still there. They're growing as we speak. But I believe last year or the year before he stopped harvesting the hops. But they're there. They're still, and they're growing quite well, right, Dan?
I have them some in my yard now.
So I think up until, or this would still potentially qualify as land and agricultural use. Julie, is that what you're getting at? Or just or that provision that basically says,
I'm looking at the
preserved or
provision that
extended.
says, if there's not a 100-foot wide area of undisturbed vegetation within the riverfront, existing vegetation cover shall be preserved or extended to the maximum extent feasible to approximate a 100-foot wide corridor of natural vegetation, which then buffers whatever you're developing beyond it. So I'm trying to determine if there's a proposal to extend into this area, if we should be expecting that, if there's a reason not to do that as part of the design.
Right. So we're not proposing any work in this area, Julia. This is going to remain as it exists today, as you see in the photo.
Well,
And I think I'm asking why would you not meet the provision of extending this to become a more natural riparian buffer.
That could be a condition not to mow it.
Well, this is the inner hundreds.
It-
So in the
it's a-
future, they can't go in here. So they're gonna leave this alone to let it naturalize and to let it grow in.
Right.
They can't maintain this like this going forward. I can't imagine you guys are gonna let them keep maintaining. This is the inner 100 feet of the riverfront area.
Right, and for agricultural use, it would have only been a 100-foot riverfront area, period, even for new. So I think there are, the commission has in the past on other projects, put perpetual conditions, limitations in place regarding riverfront area in the first 100 feet particularly. So
So
that
I
could,
look at this area as just as being left alone and no one can mow it anymore. So nature will just do its thing. I mean, there's already some woody plants that are growing in there right now.
so that even if it's not proposed, Julie, the commission has in the past considered achieving that through conditions. Which may be appropriate at a site like this.
I did look on the Registry of Deeds site for that deed book and page for 1568, page 310. And that deed transfer was between the Duda family members and so forth. And that was 1970.
Nice.
If you go back further in the previous deed to that, you're getting back into you know, the early years of 1900s and into the 1800s if you go back further than that.
30, page 16.
But that was the deed that was on the reference that was on the town's assessor's information.
Just, oh my. Does the commission have questions about that for Mark? Other members of the commission? I think that's satisfactory and nowhere near the cutoff date.
Right.
Okay, so Mark, can you provide a copy of that as an email attachment with
Certainly.
the brief explanation that this is being provided in support of the scope of geographic alternatives per 310 CMR 1058, et cetera?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Appreciate having that for the commission's records. Thank you, Cassie, as well.
Problem.
So I guess maybe we can, Julie, do you want to discuss that provision of the regs further, preserving or extending? I don't think preserving is an issue. It's the
Extension.
mechanism by which extension will be achieved. So do you want to discuss it any further? Does any other commission member wish to comment?
I had something that was kind of along those lines. My only other question that I had was whether there were any documented vernal pools in that area and whether we had to account for that in the buffering.
So unfortunately, we don't have a bylaw that would allow for that. Would be a wonderful thing to have in a bylaw, Cassie.
Mm.
And Cassie's keeping a running list right now. Pull up Oliver quickly.
I can share the overall plan, but I don't remember any vernal pools on this piece of property whatsoever within the delineation of it. As Dan mentioned, there's quite a few
groundwater seepage because of the steep slope.
But I think that's further downstream. The further upstream part, I think, has some standing bits, but just because of the gradient. But yeah, I guess that was my curiosity, is whether or not bylaws would.
Oh, closer to East Street, you mean?
Yeah, like, well, toward where the driveway would come in, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there is a slope there, definitely down from where the driveway is proposed, but.
So I guess this is the overall picture starting from Ferry Street of the property, coming in. There is a stormwater detention basin just to the south of the driveway coming in. Here's the end of Duda Drive. So the driveway's coming in this way. So there's an existing stormwater basin that's associated with God is Love Church, which is located off of East Street. And currently, right now, you can see the pictures. There's no standing water in the old farm pond. It's all vegetated.
Well, they wouldn't be there all the time, but
Yeah, right.
It's been such a dry year, it'd be impossible to know right now anyway. Yeah.
So there are no natural heritage identified, certified, or potential vernal pools.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, I had a question before Mark took the map down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put it back. I'll put it back.
So my question is, I was looking through the paperwork, and there's a proposal for a replication area for the BVW. And I don't remember hearing about it in this meeting or the last meeting.
I believe that references, for instance, if we were going to try to build a driveway access in the house off of East Street, it would require crossing this intermittent stream. Let me zoom in on this. So there's a series of the brook, the perennial stream. There's an intermittent stream that comes up into this wetland finger and all BVW around here. So if someone was to try to build off of Ferry Street, they would have to put a bridge crossing and potentially do some wetland fill or replication areas. Just not economically feasible to do that. The topography is very steep. I know probably some years ago, the commission had to deal with the washout or of the road itself in this area because the steep slopes and the erosion in the area itself. So I believe that reference, Deborah, was to if somebody was going to try to come off of Ferry Street with the property, there may have to be some replication, wetland replication.
So that was part of your alternatives analysis.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So it's not what is being proposed here. It's just that
Correct.
the only other place to come from is Ferry Street, and so.
Right. The only other legal frontage is off of Ferry Street for the piece. That's.
Okay.
But we're not proposing that.
Right. So it's a single family residence, which is exempt from the requirements for stormwater management.
Yes.
So.
And we've located the house outside of the riverfront area in 100-foot buffer zone.
Yep. So is there any further discussion of the areas of riverfront within the footprint of proposed work relative to wildlife habitat functions and values. Anyone? It seems fairly limited based on historic agricultural use and the maintained lawn footprint. Okay. And then the final standard is proposed work shall not impair surface or groundwater quality. You know, there's a,
Right.
I would agree that there's, you know, stormwater management's not required and erosion sedimentations controls have been included. And
Right.
you know,
So the
there's-
nice thing
it's
about,
vegetated.
right, so the nice thing about this is that the proposed driveway that does come from Duda Drive can follow the existing topography with little or no grade change. If you notice, you know, on the plan itself, it doesn't require a lot of cuts and fill and so forth to get a driveway in. So there's really limited land disturbance, enough to remove the topsoil, put some gravel down in the driveway and that's it. So that you can maintain the existing topography that you see out there today in those pictures. And that's shown on the plan.
All right, I guess with that, are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Cassie, do you have any further comments?
I have questions about possible conditions, but I don't know if it's premature to bring that up now.
I think I'd like to open it to public comment first.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments from the commission, if there are members of the public in attendance who would like to speak, I would ask that you raise your hand so that the agent can keep track of the order and remind everyone, including the commission, that our review is limited to the Wetlands Protection Act interests, as well as the standards set forth in the regulations. And I invite anyone to share their questions or comments in that regard.
Some of these names I recognize. I know some of these people are here for other items. Mr. Saunders and
Okay.
the Sleptrick, she's for the certificate compliance. Dan Murphy's with the city.
Mhm.
Eileen is the intern. She's the new intern. But I don't know
Okay. Well,
if anyone else here.
if there are no comments from members of the public, we will move on from that and discuss potential conditions.
I have emails that I received from some members of the public that I don't know if they were official submitted written comment, but I can read them now if you think that's appropriate, or should I? It's hard. That's kind of it's really, I know I'm phrasing it strangely. So I know that let me just look up one that may have been an official, like, written comment that I received. So this was before the first segment of the hearing, you know, and then it was continued past the 10th to today.
Well, let's err on the side of conclusion, and if you think it's a official comment, please read it into the record.
Yeah, okay. I do have one. So this is from, I believe he's in the butter. I don't know exactly what property. His name is Michael McGuire. And he said, this is after the meeting on the 26th. And this is the message that I got from him as follows. It says, "Good evening, Cassie. I listened in and didn't want to prolong it since it will be continued, but I want to give some history of the property that you can pass along to the members. There were some questions about the old farm pond. My entire youth was spent in that area. Duda and Burt farms were there. When I was a kid, we used to catch frogs in the pond and hiked through the whole area on our way up the mountain. The pond was actually used by Duda to irrigate the field behind my house on 112 Ferry Street. That's his residence. The entire area behind where the current church is on East Street and Mount Thomas Estates was a swamp. You had to wear boots to walk through it. The brook would turn into a stream in the spring from the spring melt. I don't really recall a brook going through the Mount Thomas Estates land as much as it was always very wet and at a high water table. In my opinion, most of the wetland damage has been done. I do not know, but I think I do, how that whole area was allowed to be built on, and would be curious what drainage system was constructed in order to build condos. How did a pond disappear? ? I wonder where the water was redirected, probably into people's cellars. I know you need environmental maps to prove and document its history, but I lived on it since I was 5 years old until I moved out of the house after high school. For what it's worth, Mike." And that is the extent of the comment.
Thank you. Please, in addition, please print that for the file. And I did not hear a comment with regard to the notice of intent and current conditions, particularly. I think the development he's mentioning predates everyone in this meeting. So, all right. So with that, shall we discuss potential conditions in addition, or modifications of our standard conditions, Cassie?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Mark and Dan, the commission has a pretty robust set of standard pre-construction, construction, post-construction conditions. We do our best to adapt it to projects so that there's less confusion about whether or not a boilerplate condition applies or not. But I think first and foremost, Julie's observations regarding the provision in the regulations that allows for consideration of preservation or expansion of natural vegetation or natural vegetated corridor to the extent practicable in the first 100 feet is worth including as a perpetual condition. Should the commission consider monumentation?
I would say yes.
Do we want to be specific, or do we want to require the pre-construction submittal? Should we, I think it works out better in the long run if we're specific about frequency. Cassie, do you have any experience with the commission's past practices regarding how, the spacing of monumentation?
I know that we've done other ones. We've done, if this is for the, I don't know if it was necessarily for Riverfront area, but maybe it was, I can't remember if it was either for BBW or just buffer zone. I think it was for just BBW that we did every 25 feet. And then I don't know if that's maybe a little too close or too frequent for a single family home. But there's just generally been, I think, confusion around that requirement. Like, what are the markers? Can they be a pin in the ground? Does it need to be like super high and visible? Does it have to have like wording at all? Like, could you just put boulders, and I feel like we haven't really
settled on anything that works terribly well over time.
And
Right.
I guess I don't want to say, I guess I sympathize with the potential like burden that can put on a single family homeowner for projects like this. If it's a very large area, then it's like, could be a lot of boulders, depending on how frequent you need that to be. If it's every 25 feet, it could be a lot of pins, it could be, but I understand also the intent and the reasoning behind having something like that.
But also if it's just rebar, 3/4 inch rebar or something, that's not, a huge burden to put those in some locations.
Most towns are requiring 4-inch diameter bounds, so that
Like a
becomes a different story. Most people are not requiring rebar. I didn't mean to interrupt in your discussion. But.
No, but
no, that's fine.
we've used it in other sites where they use rebar and they put a little cap on the top that says it's a boundary.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be the most inexpensive way to do it. But a lot of commissions are requiring your 4-inch diameter lally column or 4-inch PVC, something a little bit more substantial than that.
We've done
One option could be that we mark in the field where we think the bounds could go to give it demarcation, let you guys look at it. And if you agree to it, then that might work, because like Cassie's bringing up, every line is different. It's hard to say every 25 feet, because what if you start having a bend? So you need maybe 15 feet in order to make the radius. So in some cases, I've been on sites like on that driveway that you saw, that's a straight shot. If you did 3 posts in there, 60 feet apart, that should be pretty clear. But but we could mark it in the field and have you guys come look at it, with the erosion control. And if you agree to it, okay, or we can add more, whatever you think would be appropriate, instead of trying to figure it out now without being on the ground. That's the harder part, is figuring it out in space versus being on the ground on what makes appropriate sense to where to put those bounds.
Right.
So maybe we make this a pre-construction condition with a field mark, a marked up site plan or a sketch and preliminary field demarcation of monumentation locations no less than 25 feet apart, no more than 50 feet apart.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. We've done a lot of different methods, all the way from boulders to birdhouses to trees, to, like Dan said, lolly columns or iron pipes, like Jay mentioned. So there's a lot of different options depending on what not only the applicant would like to see or do, but the commission would be happy with. So I think it makes sense to do it, as a pre-construction meeting aspect of it.
That I appreciate that, because I think that people not knowing but it having like a set, the way it's worded right now, it seems like it's just kind of like a set thing. And now if this gives us more wiggle room to just figure it out on the field and be like, okay, this is their proposed material for the markers, this is their proposed spacing for them. Just get review and approval by the commission as a pre-construction requirement. We'll go from there. So I can change the wording a little.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. The usual things, no dumping of yard, disposal of yard waste. It's, the work in Riverfront is the driveway. So does anyone have anything? I'm thinking our standard conditions really cover pretty much everything.
It's a pretty flat area, so as long as there's some kind of erosion controls, it's pretty safe to be working there.
All right, so check. No, go ahead.
Do we need to say anything about, because it is going to be a very long driveway, do we have to wait until something is built, or do we say anything about sanding, salting, because it is so close to BBW?
Like snow storage or something like that?
Oh.
So that snow storage has to be outside the first 100 feet?
which is not a problem with us.
Right, because your driveway's outside 100 feet,
Correct, correct. So, right.
belt and suspenders.
And for clarification, those bounds we were referring to, those would probably be on the 100-foot, correct? Or was there someplace
Yes.
thinking? I think that makes the most sense to be on the 100 because there's no works allowed within the 100.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Of the riverfront, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're thinking there's a condition in there, just an in perpetuity condition. It sounds like snow storage can't occur within the 100-foot riverfront area.
Right.
Okay, and then for like road management of the driveway itself, can we put anything on there, or should we put anything on there that talks about salt use or other de-icing tools, chemicals?
Maybe I think Cassie, maybe that's a follow-up conversation you could have with DEP about what restrictions the commission can put on salt alternatives in riverfront area.
Okay. I can definitely do that.
Does anyone, anything else?
I had other ones, not to switch gears too much. One of the items in there is the monitoring during construction. Is that something that want to include in the same way that it is, which right now it's weekly? Is that something that we just don't want to include at all because of the size of the project? Is it something that we maybe could reduce the frequency?
How do folks feel about weekly during construction of the driveway in riverfront area? And then cease reporting once disturbed areas within riverfront area have stabilized? I see thumbs up. Julie, what do you think?
I'm fine with that as long as we're confident that there's not going to be tracking of material from the house construction.
Sure. It could include the house construction too, Julia.
So just one of the things that's come up with, especially something like this, like a single family home, some people it is there's a cost associated with having someone monitor every week. And so if it does include the construction of the house as well, I don't know if that might be like a shock to the property owner.
Well, the property owner is Mr. Lepin, and he's the developer.
I believe so. I know that there was discussion at the last meeting about potentially selling it very soon. I don't.
Correct. The property in itself is under contract to be sold. So Mr. Lepin is not going to be building a house on it himself. It would be potentially the new owner.
So outside riverfront area, the commission doesn't have jurisdiction.
Okay.
So I guess I'm not, I understand what Julie's saying, and maybe it's monthly and we have less stringent stipulations on the credentials. So if someone's, the property owner is whoever's seeing the project through, if and when that happens, they can email the agent photographs of the driveway in riverfront area once work is outside the riverfront area, to address Julie's concern that there may be soil tracking from the active construction area outside riverfront through riverfront and onto public roadway.
If a new owner takes over this property in 3 months, wouldn't they have to go through this whole same process to build a property there, or they can tag on to our agreement?
It comes with the order of conditions.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the order will be tied to the property, not to the property owner. And there's language in the order that says, like, the permittee, assessors, and successors and or signs. It like says
Okay,
that like every
yes,
time.
yes, no, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
But I wonder if it would make sense in approach it a different way where maybe there could be some kind of note in the plan saying that they have to establish some kind of like wash the tires of the cars before they leave the site and use the road. Or is that crazy? It doesn't make sense. Or I don't know what options there are. Like, is there any
Tire
actions they can
washing
take?
is not a typical BMP.
Okay. Or
we-
like a grate or something that they can drive over before they enter the
Clear
area.
stone
Mark-
construction
Mark,
path.
Mark, don't you have some kind of stone thing built
Yes,
in?
yeah,
the-
so we have a
the-
stone tracking pad coming from the end of Duda Drive into the property itself within the 100-foot buffer zone. So that we've got that covered during construction. That stone tracking pad would take care of cleaning the debris off of the tires of the vehicles.
That would be from the road. That would be joining the road to the driveway, not where, what Julian, I think, was talking about was
Correct.
the house
Correct.
back out.
So- Right. So the proposed driveway area in itself, I would anticipate they wouldn't finish that immediately, because you don't want to put in a driveway and pave it and then get heavy construction equipment driving over your brand new driveway to build your house. So it's kind of in reverse of being able to build a good gravel driveway in, build your house, and then complete your driveway. Because
So, right. So if we request that they do the weekly inspections until the driveway is complete and stabilized, then we're probably requesting them throughout the duration of the project by proxy.
Correct. So that could be, like Cassie was saying, build a house, it could be 3 months or 4 months.
If they're
before
building on a
somebody-
wetland, I mean, that's sort of the situation that they're coming into. Well, not on a wetland, but near
In the buffer zone.
in a
right.
buffer zone. That's something that I think that the buyer needs to be aware of what that means. I would assume that if the construction vehicles are going to go in and out, they're going to be putting down some sort of either gravel road or riprap for the, okay.
Correct. Correct. They will have to build a gravel driveway in order to get all their equipment in.
And I would think that any ENS controls that you're putting on the edge of that driveway should handle whatever potential tracking could happen from the house site down the driveway, because before they get onto the road, they've got to go through a tracking pad before they get back onto the pavement. And that tracking pad looks like a standard one the EPA requires for construction general permits.
Correct.
So that's a pretty standard practice to do that. I think the ENS controls along that southern, I'll call it the southern edge, it's really the eastern edge of the driveway is really the critical item here. As long as those are in good shape, you shouldn't have anything leaving that driveway. And like Jay mentioned earlier, it's flat site with very little watershed to accumulate to get stuff to be moving. It can happen, 4-inch rain event, anything can happen, but the likelihood is fairly low due to its geomorphology. It's fairly flat. So I think you get good bomb-proof ENS controls on the east side of that driveway. That should help a lot with anything migrating.
And we are proposing silt
See
fence.
that before you guys need to see that installed before they can go forward.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
it's okay. So the plans do show that a silt fence will be installed. And maintain.
Just the silt, that's not and store wattle or
No, just a silt fence. And maintained throughout the construction.
What's the detail on that, Mark? Is it towed in to the up gradient
Yep.
slope?
Correct. It is all towed in. It's on that sheet 2. So it has to be trenched in. Yes. Not just put up there and left open on the bottom like some people put in.
so with that in mind, are we saying that we are requiring monitoring or not? If, the monitoring would be happening throughout the instability of the driveway, which essentially is going to be the entirety of the construction project, because of the sequencing would be you finish the driveway and stabilize that last after the house is completed. And so, but with what Dan just noted that, we have these erosion controls, does that mean that we feel like that's fine, or the monitoring to, as a requirement to ensure that the erosion controls are being maintained, or it's up to you guys.
Do we ask for the monitoring and let someone come back to us and say, hey, the site's stable and, can I have, release them from that?
That'd be a nice option.
Mhm.
So you're saying, like,
Yeah.
So that's existing, like how it is, that once it's stable, they can come and get it released, but you're saying like once, I guess I don't know how that's different from the current.
Well, just require them to have monitoring, and then if they feel that the site is stable, they could come to you and ask for a site visit, and when we could make a decision that, yeah, everything looks great and you're good, or, unless there's some crazy rain event or whatever.
I see.
I was going to say that if there was a site visit, it would be good to see that under the conditions that you would expect to have some sort of fail. Heavy rain event or something like that. Or just after.
Yeah, basically the way it's worded now is that the boilerplate version is basically that, gosh, I want to say it matches what the SWIP requirement is. If there's a certain amount of rain, inches, then even if they have achieved suspended reporting because the site's stable, they still have to send a report because it was enough of an event that it should be checked. And Mark's well familiar with that. He does it a bunch for
It's
that
quarter
Lepin
inch.
property. Yeah.
The EPA standard is a 1/4 inch rain event, once a week or after a 1/4 inch rain event. That's considered significant.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, it's a little much for significant, but it is what it is. It's the rules.
So the commission, are you thinking that that will be the requirement, kind of, so pretty close to what it says now, just weekly reporting while the area is unstable? If the applicant or the property owner feels it is becomes sufficiently stable, they can come ask for a review and approval of that suspended reporting.
Yep.
Barring any.
Yeah, I think that's a great option from my side of the coin, is because the landowner has an option. If they want to choose to spend a little extra money, get the site more stable sooner, then he can be released, or they can be released from this requirement. So it's sort of a reward, right? You're creating a condition that's encouraging people to get it done faster so they can be released, and it costs them less money in the long run. So it should benefit you really in the long run to encourage them, go get it done. If you don't want to do any monitoring, stabilize it as fast as you can and let us know. So I think that's a good option. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate that option.
Cool. All right, I had one more if we don't feel like that's settled. The next was there's a lot of boilerplate stuff in there about invasives, providing an inventory of invasives and a plan for management of them as a pre-construction requirement, and then in perpetuity conditions saying that, you can't use herbicides or pesticides within the buffer zone / resource areas, and saying that there should be like continued management of invasives, and that new plantings have to be native species and things like that.
So Mark, if I understood it correctly, it's going to be maintained lawn along the edges of the driveway still, right?
Correct.
So, and then once we're out of the limit of work, it's not the typical, but I think it's okay to leave that in there, and the routine management of the area as we expect it to be managed should be sufficient. But that if there's suddenly an outbreak of invasive species, we can, within the limit of work, then we can address, that can be used to address that. Dan, did your field notes document invasive species by, just, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. No, in the open field area, no. Turf grass, there's some white matter in there, the hops, obviously. But in the field area, or in the vegetated part, you got sumac in there, multiflora roses in there, oriental bittersweet, all the heavy hitters are in there. But in the itself, or in that maintained area, there's nothing. And if we can't touch the inner 100, then that will grow with invasives. There's no question that's going to happen.
So maybe what it is we want management of invasives within the portion of the 100-foot inner riparian zone that's going to be reestablished as an unmanaged riparian corridor. Otherwise,
How about we limit the area to the area that's already part of the field so that we
yeah,
don't have,
no, the area where the vegetated
Right.
corridor or the woody corridor is extended by absence of management now has to be managed for invasives.
makes sense, right? Because that would make it, it would be a more realistic new growth versus stuff that's already in the woods, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That 100-foot area to be like revegetated, even though it's like kind of vegetated now. They have to go in there and
Yep.
Refer to it as
Vegetation.
naturalized.
Yeah,
Refer
there
to
you go.
natural. When you leave an area alone, it's called naturalizing.
yeah. So they'll have to make sure that invasives don't take hold there.
Yes.
Okay. And so do we still want as a pre-construction a plan to that effect?
Yep.
Okay. Just want to see if they had any other notes. I don't know if anybody else has anything they had a question about or conditions they wanted to add.
Julie, do you have a recommendation for management of invasives in that naturalized area? Or do we want to?
I mean, probably the most successful option in the long term would be to purposefully vegetate it with natives to help fill the niches before they all fill in with invasives. That would be my approach.
So do we want to require a pre-construction submittal of a revegetation plan, a restoration plan for that portion of former agricultural land within Riverfront?
I think that's an excellent idea if we have the authority to do that.
I think that condition, that provision in the regs opens the door for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. So it's a pre-construction requirement, a restoration plan of vegetation within the previously managed agricultural area so that invasives don't take hold.
Yes. And I think we can elaborate to say that the plan should include a combination of trees, native trees and shrubs.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie. Anything else? We're ready to entertain a motion.
So I just want to check to make sure there's other things. So the only reason I'm thinking about this so much is we recently had another order of conditions that was issued recently for a single family home. They had a lot of issues with a lot of the boilerplate things that, weren't previously discussed. And they just, the monitoring one was one of them and the monument one was another. And then this invasive thing was another thing that they were concerned about having to meet. I just want to make sure. A big one was landscape plants needing to be, or non-invasives. That doesn't seem like that's that crazy, that the landscape plants can't be invasives.
That's not crazy.
Yeah. Do we need an inventory of existing invasives?
Not really. I mean, if we can add reference to the MyPag list, that then means that whatever's invasive considered invasive in Massachusetts, if it suddenly makes its way into that area, it's included.
Okay, I think all my questions about monitoring were answered.
I did have one other question. On the original map that Mark pulled up, down where it says vegetation cover, number 5, it did say hay.
So we will, I think our standard condition is to prohibit the use of hay, and it's straw only.
Thank
Yep, thank you, Deb.
Okay, I got that.
And yeah, I thought we had changed that on all our plans, so I guess we missed one. Because yes, we know it's straw. Number 5. But yes. Yep, I guess we missed that one. Yeah, straw, for sure.
The last one I can think is no application of fertilizers or pesticides on the lawns or landscaped areas in the 100-foot buffer zone. Is it still, we want to keep that one too, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, that was it for me.
Okay, anyone else going? Would anyone care to make a motion to close the hearing and approve or deny the order of conditions?
Motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions with the ongoing and construction conditions as discussed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August?
Aye.
Busa?
Aye.
Buttrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Teffer?
Aye.
Whittemore? Not present. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, good evening. Thank you very much, all.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, request for certificates of compliance, public meeting, request for certificate of compliance, Mass DEP file number 151304, filed by GEI Consultants for an order of conditions related to work on a large-scale solar project for which no work was ever completed at 50 Florence Road, map 115, lots 2 and 5. Mr. Saunders, may I presume you would like us to continue this to our next hearing, or would you like?
Yes, I would. As discussed earlier this evening, till the June 14th meeting, okay?
Thank you. Is there a motion to continue this item to June 14th at 6 p.m.?
Motion to go ahead.
Motion to continue to June 14th at 6 p.m.
Is there a
I'll second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August? Oh, August is recused. My apologies. Busa?
Aye.
Buttrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Teffer?
Aye.
Whittemore? Absent. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you very much.
Next item, request for certificate of compliance, Mass DEP file number 1510016, filed by Kathleen Slepchuk for an order of conditions related to completed work on a single-family home that is part of a subdivision at 21 Sterling Drive, map 174, lot 200. Good evening. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
This is one of the older file numbers we've seen. So I think you may have the record. Congratulations. What year was the house built?
1984.
It's a very early
I
one.
take it back, 1982. I bought it in 1984 and it's been in my family for over 35 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Cassie, was there any file available?
Unfortunately, no. I wasn't able to find it, but Kathleen, it was really helpful. They were able to provide a certificate of compliance that their neighbor got at 17 Sterling.
Okay.
But I had a question. I'd like to share my screen now if it's all right. I did also perform a site visit. Obviously, everything is stable. The work is done. Like it was great. But yeah, let me share this document. So what I thought was significant is that it lists, so the DEP file number that's related is 4 and 16.
Okay.
And for, that's where, this is where they're dated. This is 4, this is 16. And then here it says regarding 17 Sterling Drive, but here it's certified that the work related with the above reference orders has been satisfactorily complete. It's not a partial.
I'm going to say that that is perhaps an administrative error. So I think what's best is that we issue an order of certificate, discuss the certificate of compliance. It looks like the house was built up by the road. It's in the back portion was in the buffer zone to Whitebrook. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Whitebrook is intermittent there.
Yes.
So I don't think there's very much, especially since the commission did not maintain its file.
Correct.
I think it will just be most straightforward if we grant a certificate of compliance for this DEP file number.
Thank you.
Would anyone care to make a motion? Because I can't.
Motion to issue a certificate of compliance for the long completed work.
Fair second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August?
Aye.
Busa?
Aye.
Buttrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Teffer?
Aye.
Whittemore? Absent. Motion carries. Thank you. Cassie will have your paperwork for you soon.
Thank
Yes.
you. Good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. It is 7:51. So let's see. Are there any updates on enforcement actions, Cassie?
No updates.
Okay. Are there any open space updates?
We have, okay, so the big one is Echodale. They just we're still trying to schedule the site visit. But they just wanted to make sure there was no changes in, the plans for the site or things like that. I from what I remember, there was nothing. We're still trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to double check. I was waiting for scheduling the meeting to hear back from them to schedule it anyway. So just kind of working on their availability. But now that today is my first day starting full time. So we really might be able to do some stuff with this. So and with Eileen here too, hopefully she can help as well. So we're gonna do stuff.
Okay. So compliance updates. We've already heard that the commission is in receipt of a request to extend the order of conditions for Lepin Properties 151287. We've received that well ahead of the 30-day cutoff. So we'll be seeing that at our next agenda. Are there any other updates of significance to share?
No, not with any other, we've been receiving reports as necessary for ones that don't have it suspended yet. And everything else, yeah, 50 Florence is the big one, and we'll see them next time.
Okay. Are there any comments, anyone on the commission is looking for an update on that Cassie can look into before our next meeting? No? Okay. General business meeting minutes, April 26, 2021.
Yeah, Deb again reviewed them. She gave me a lot of good typos that I had to fix in that one. So a lot of those have been changed as they're updated. I know it was super long, so appreciate it. Anybody who read those, and sorry for the delay and now subsequent delay for the minutes from the 10th.
Okay. But, so from that meeting, I was absent, Julie was absent. Amy left at 8:28. Sorry, I missed you. The whole thing.
You owe me big time.
Cheers. I always do, Jay. Thank you.
No problem.
That was the long meeting. So, my goodness. Okay, I do. I see what you're saying now. So I don't think we have.
We need Michael, I think.
Need Michael for sufficient quorum.
Okay.
So we will have to push this to our next agenda. Okay, so let me pull my agenda back up. Glendale Avenue, proposed bridge work, Glendale Avenue Road.
Glendale Street.
Oh,
Street.
sorry.
Hey, Dan
That's my
Murphy, how
bad.
are you?
Hi. Hi, so Glendale Street Bridge, we had a DOT inspection that was found to be not in great condition. We need to make some repairs. And I've got tonight with me, both the contractor and the bridge engineer. Steve Langevin is here from GPI, and Seth Toch, I think, is here from NEL, and they're doing the work. So what happened was GPI did some design for temporary repairs. We're here just to really get some guidance from you on how we permit this, and I wanted to have the contractor to explain and the bridge engineer to explain exactly how they're looking to do the work. So I'm hoping they're there. They've been waiting a while.
Thank you all for your patience.
And they're still on mute, both of them, so I'm not sure they're ready to go. Cassie, oh, go ahead. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and I think we get Seth. Looks like he's jumped in now too.
How's it going, everybody?
Good. So I don't know the best way to go. If, Steve, you want to say something first, then we'll turn it over to Seth to talk about what they're going to do in the field.
Sure. Yeah, what I'll do is I'm actually the person who developed the repair detail and the plan. The person who's been working with you the most, Kim Armstrong, she's on vacation. So while we're working hard tonight, she's in Mexico enjoying herself. That's this little added twist to it. So I think what I'll do is I'll just share my screen. Is everyone familiar with the location we're talking about, or?
Yes, probably.
Yes.
Some of us maybe more so than others, but.
Maybe what I'll do.
When I ride my bike
that?
over it, I try not to shake it too much.
Can everyone see my screen here?
I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share, but I'm not seeing it yet. Sometimes oh, there we go.
There it comes.
Yeah.
So I lost my, so this is the location, Glendale Street over, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right, but is it the Manhan River?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the location. This is, let's see, north is on the overhead wires side. This thing to do now is go to the repair detail, which shows a plan view, shows the repair area, and a bunch of notes. But I think first I'm going to start off with just this plan view. So basically, this bridge was built in was it 1937, and it's a steel beam bridge. There's about 5 beams and a concrete deck. The beams, though, are in very poor condition, as Daniel mentioned, but there are actually lots of locations that need repairs. But the one area that we're most concerned with is actually, now this is looking at a bird's eye view with north still going up this way. There's this area on the northeast side. It's the north splice on this bridge where the 2 beams, I don't know if you can see my hands too on the camera, but the beams are, it's a 3-span continuous bridge, which on the side note as a structural engineer is very impressive because in 1937, they didn't have computers to design this thing. So that kind of blew me away a little bit. So someone spent a lot of time designing this bridge. Anyway, so the 2 beams, the beams come out to the site in 3 pieces, and where this location is, there's a splice that connects the pieces together when they're actually constructing the bridge. And right along where the 2 beams meet, there are plates that connect with rivets, but there's a crack and then there's a major section loss right at that location. So it's like the beams are kind of splitting apart a little bit, which is in structural terms very bad. Actually, I have a picture here if you want to see, if you guys can see that. These are actually where the beams come together, and this is like a kind of a rutting of the steel right where the beams would be. So essentially, like I said, they're kind of seemingly coming apart a little bit. So my repair detail, or GPI's repair detail, is actually just to come in and put a larger plate over, this area of the smaller plate. There are currently 60 rivets out there. We're going to expand that to 90 rivets. And actually, I'm sorry, 90 high strength bolts. And we're going to keep about 30 of the rivets that are out there now in place. In order to make this happen, we're going to kind of make a sandwich of steel. And we're going to put some the epoxy. This is actually a Mass DOT comment. They wanted to put epoxy in there, put the plates in place, and then gradually and carefully replace and add the new bolts, and then also bore out some of the existing rivets. Because really right now, they're just, as you saw in the picture, they're all corroded down, they're flat, they're not really, there's a lot of them that are not doing their job. There's still a lot in place. It's not totally dangerous yet, but it's still, they need to be replaced soon. So what we're trying to do here, that's the location again in plan view. So what we would do is, and the contractor can jump in a moment to talk about the repair detail, but what we're talking about doing is shutting down a part of the road with some drums so that there isn't live load extra loading on that area where that beam is during construction while they're replacing some of those rivets with bolts. And then and that would be in lieu of, instead of doing any kind of shoring underwater and in the water. So on the Manham River, really what they would have to do, the contractor, like I said, I can talk more about it, but just from what I understand, we're looking at doing going in there with waders and some scaffolding, and because it's good, probably, I don't know, say 20 feet above the riverbed. They'll have to figure out a way to get up there and do the work and do the repair. And then, and all the impacts to the river at that point are just to access the beams to do the repair. So there's not a lot of change going on here, and there shouldn't be too much disturbance. There's the beams are not being painted in the field. There's no welding. There is the grinding that would be required, and the attachment of the plates. I don't do NEI. I forgot. I'm not sure with individual with NEI, but would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So our approach to this is, I mean, the repair is fairly straightforward and simple. The big thing for us is obviously access to the repair point there. Our thought was to get in the river with some scaffolding. It's like a 7x7 footprint, little tower, and then it's about a 5-day job. So we'd line the, since it's short term, we're thinking to stick a scaffold tower in the water so our guys can access it every day. So it's probably a day to set it up and start cleaning up the repair, and then we'd line it with poly to catch any of the rust flakes and all that stuff, and then just have at the repair. I mean, that's one of the approaches we think is the quickest. Another approach would be to hang something off of the beams, but again, you're entering the water to make that happen as well. So I think just from looking at the scope, my opinion is to stick a shoring tower in there. So I don't know if that affects anything for you guys.
Thanks. Sorry, putting in my dinner order. The area is mapped as let me see if I can get this to priority and estimated habitat. Do you know what the natural heritage has mapped at that area, at that location?
I do not.
That might be a good question to get an answer on.
Yep.
Cassie, I don't know if you've had any reason to look into that recently, but it's potentially, well, be any number of things, but it does appear to be, it does follow the river corridor. So I'm not sure if it's aquatic or something that just likes to be near the river.
Turtles.
It may be turtles. It could be
Dragonflies.
I don't know if it'd be a mussel species. Not that that's been an issue before, but I think that would be a good piece of information to verify.
Okay.
You could reach out to Natural Heritage.
Okay.
Honestly, I think strategically that could be a consideration. How to make this go most expeditiously. Do you have a schedule in mind?
Well, we've got the contractor on board, and we're obviously hoping, as soon as we get approval from the commission, we're going to go. So.
And Cassie, how does this fall into a non-category of the generic order?
Oh, for the bundle?
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. I guess my main question was when you set up the scaffolding to kind of secure it in place, is there gonna have to be any ground disturbance within the riverbed?
It's 4 posts, so it likely, I don't know what you guys would consider disturbing, but it's gonna stick into the riverbed.
Do you know by how much?
The legs on that thing, they're probably 8 inches.
So they're like 8 inches wide, but then do you know how deep?
I'm sorry, they're like 8 inches deep.
Oh,
but
okay.
they're like 2-inch posts.
Oh,
inch and
okay.
a half, yeah. So it's
Do you
almost like a
know,
fence post.
is the substrate fairly like muddy deep, or are we sure that there's enough, bedrock substrate to actually put the scaffolding on, or is that, you
That's
know more
gonna
about this than I do probably.
Sandy bottom stream
It's,
through there.
it's
Sandy
sure,
bottom.
it's sand bottom.
Yeah, okay.
That's partly why I'm a little bit concerned about figuring out what natural heritage has mapped there. Drawing from personal experience, I've been told that under a bridge in a different place was where the largest specimens of certain state listed mussel were observed. So I would want to make sure we're not on the wrong side of natural heritage on this one.
Yep.
If we can, look into whether or not this would fit under, I agree, scaffolding and waders in a river is not it's definitely a gray area. So if we can get an answer on that and follow up with you, Dan,
Okay,
or if you can reach out to Natural Heritage,
sure.
and Cassie, you can maybe.
Are you with that? Are you wanting like a letter from National Heritage like we get with other projects, or are you wanting just them to tell him what kind of thing is there?
I'm wondering if you can just get an information request, a list of species.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean so it's in priority and estimated. So Natural Heritage is going to have jurisdiction under MISA and Wetlands Protection Act, if that's the case. So the benefit of a notice of intent is a streamlined review from Natural Heritage, holding them to 30 instead of 60 days. But it may just be worth a conversation with them to get their take on, whether or not this can be done in a way that they can somehow exempt from MISA. If that makes sense, Dan.
Yeah.
I have just a question. Does anybody know under what conditions bridge projects are Wetland Protection Act exempt?
When they're Mass DOT projects.
Using Mass DOT funding for this, Dan?
I think it's when Mass DOT does the project, Dan.
Yeah, no, this is ours. Yeah.
And so we're thinking, barring whatever we find out from National Heritage, just with the nature of the work as it is. So assuming National Heritage is like nothing with us, we're fine. Would they still need to get an NOI, or is it be an RDA, or do we not know? Or would it be covered under the bundle?
I think that we have to figure out if it's covered under the bundle.
Just, I don't know if this is appropriate, but in the interest of time, do you think that's something that we could determine tonight?
Do you have it handy?
Yeah, yep.
Can you pull it up? That'd be
Yeah.
Translation, I have no recollection of the specifics of that table.
I have it right here. Hold on just a second.
So you're going to drill a bunch of new holes to apply this new plate to have more attachment points, right? So you're going to collect the drilling remnants with poly or something? Is that the plan, or
Yeah,
not sure?
Yep, we'll typically line the platform with some 6 mil poly.
Okay.
And while Cassie's pulling that up, where do you envision, how much of a staging area do you need, and where will that staging area be?
That work, we don't need a ton of space to do the work. It's really, when you mean staging, you mean like my trucks and stuff like that?
Yeah, where are people gonna, that's a road with
There's no
shoulder.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have the barrels taken right there. So there should be enough room for one truck, and that's really all I need to perform the work.
Okay, so
We need to
I'm not
scroll
sure we
down
had
to the
bridge.
one that's hidden.
new water. Can you go up to the headers on the tables on the?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
This is the work, the type of category, typical work, and then what if they do this kind of work,
Mm-hmm.
what requires.
Looks like we would be in 5 because there's no bypass pumping. Well,
Yeah, there's definitely no stream flow controls.
mhm.
And these are typical projects, not
Not
Right.
exhaustive.
right.
true.
So
Yeah, the big one with that one was when you're probably going to be potentially like in the water, but you're not going to be like stopping flow. You know, like I said, the big part was that does not require bypass pumping, and everything else is kind of like examples of.
right.
I will add too that the area is really pretty small. It's only about 3 feet wide and about 2.5 feet tall, and it's on both sides of the beam. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty isolated. It's not. We're not going down the length of the beam or too far over the river. It's just that one little area.
So for 5, what, Cassie, can you refresh my memory? What did we mean by certain resource areas?
It probably, I want to say that it probably meant like buffer zone in certain resource areas.
But we also talk about doesn't require bypass pumping. So you
Right.
wouldn't get that in Riverfront and BLSF. You'd be dealing with that in streams.
Right.
So, I mean, it maybe if you can go back, Cassie, if you can go back to the NOI and double check that, that may be appropriate, but I think additional consideration needs to be given to what Dan Murphy learns from, sorry, there are 2 Dans here. Learns from from his conversation with Natural Heritage.
Okay.
Because then I think otherwise, as much as it may not sound like it at first glance or first utterance, it may be more efficient to, in terms of your timeline, to file a notice of intent to get a streamlined review through Natural Heritage if they're going to hold, because if you don't, this doesn't cover Natural Heritage, right?
Right. Yeah. This doesn't overcome any of the requirements from National Heritage.
So it's without a notice of intent, they get 60 days. And my impression is you want to be doing this work sooner than later. So barring an emergency declaration from Mass DOT,
it's a good point. Yeah. If
another situation, unless the city can make such a declaration, if it is an emergency. If not, then I guess we just need to know what the animals are.
Yeah. If the city, I know. It'd be helpful if DOT could also say something that it's valid for it to be considered an emergency. I think it just needs to be the city declaring such a thing, at least. And then if you were to get an emergency certification from the commission, you would have 30 days to complete the work. So you'd have to get it done within 30 days then.
Yeah. So then there's that.
Yeah.
It's really meant to abate the
Emergency,
immediate
yeah.
threat to public health or safety. And
Right.
obviously the structural integrity of a bridge, you've got public health and safety on that right there. So I think a few more pieces can fall into place, but
Okay.
Dan, do you have a contact at Natural Heritage you could reach out to?
I do not.
Okay.
But I can get on the horn, find one.
Well, they're not in their offices, so
No.
No. Unfortunately.
I know that they've been completing their reviews, but I
They
don't know.
have, they're all online. They're all doing stuff electronically.
Okay.
I can send you a couple.
That would be great.
So just from my understanding, it sounds like what the conclusion that's been drawn is that it might fit under the bundle notice of intent or bundle order of conditions, but we can't really tell until we hear back from National Heritage. National Heritage might take a long time, and so it might make sense to go for a notice of intent to force them to do that on a get back to you in a faster track. And then after that, if all of that you can be found to be too long, it might be appropriate to get emergency certification. If you think you can do it within that
This is
time.
in fact an emergency.
Right. So, it's hard because it's hard not to be able to tell you like, okay, this is exactly yes RDA or yes NOI, but hopefully once we get that info from National Heritage.
Yeah, we should be able to get an initial reaction from Natural Heritage in how long do we think?
So I think if you just reach out for a consultation,
Yeah.
Especially, knowing that it's a bridge, you're representing a municipality, that might, they're pretty responsive to email these days. So,
Okay, no, we'll start there and then make a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know, what you find out from them, and I can help see what the next steps are.
Okay, I appreciate the guidance.
Is there any concern that because of the sandy bottom, you might need to protect the scaffolding from scour? I don't think that river is moving quickly through there under conditions like we have currently, but certainly if you were to get a big storm, I know there's a lot of erosion that happens there. Because that would change the impact potentially if you were needing to somehow protect the scaffolding and divert water around it.
We haven't investigated enough. The one day that I was out there, it had rained for like 3 days straight, so it was pretty muddy, and it was flowing. So I couldn't really tell what the bottom looked like at that point. But
You'd be wanting to go out there when you saw 5 days of dry weather, right?
correct. Yeah, we could try to plan it that way.
Okay.
It's likely a mussel. I'm looking at some of the old write-ups from Natural Heritage that I'm finding around, and when they were doing the fish ladder, and they're just talking about the vicinity. But yeah, it's kind of an array of like wood turtle, eastern pond mussel, like those sorts of things. So, but yeah, it'd be good to know because it looks like that's just kind of an approximation for just manhand upstream of the ladder. So they might have a better idea of what exactly is right at Glendale.
Okay, that's a good point. So maybe, just preliminarily, it sounds like, say Natural Heritage does come back and say that they determine that it is a species that would be in the water. It sounds like the commission would be leaning towards more needing a notice of intent in that instance, because it would need further, like a fuller review by National Heritage for the work to actually be done.
So I guess what I'm saying is if right, that's one possibility, particularly because if you file for a streamlined review, it holds Natural Heritage to 30 days instead of 60. So in terms of timeline moving forward, the submittal deadline for if this doesn't fall under the bundled NOI and or if you need to move forward with whatever is most efficient with Natural Heritage, then filing with the commission, the deadline's the same regardless of the application. You've already kind of got everything sketched out, so it doesn't necessarily need to be a very involved filing.
But
really, the important thing is getting things going. If you need to get things going with Natural Heritage, getting that moving.
yeah, what you're saying is that maybe even up to the city's strategy for permitting more so than because we feel like we need to see it ourselves.
Right.
Yep.
But I think the commission's interests are also, you know, what is that area mapped as for rare species habitat?
Mhm.
So.
But I mean, I've had experiences with mussels on the Manhan as well. And there will probably be a need to have a biologist doing some kind of survey prior to the work and possibly during too. And that wouldn't necessarily be our requirement, but
That would be a natural heritage requirement.
Right.
Yeah, maybe when you talk to National Heritage, you can talk about, you know, I mean, obviously primarily figuring out like what are the species there, what would be the requirement for any work that's going on there. And maybe they have recommendations for like, if it is an emergency, like what, I don't know, like how does that come into play? Like the potential emergency factor of it, you know? I don't know how that normally works for them.
I mean, they have to have one basically because they can't they can't not have an emergency provision.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Can you hear my children in the background? Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just, these things happen.
They're fine. Hold on here. Let me.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
So, Natural Heritage, MISA, any person requesting permission to do an emergency project shall specify to the director why it's necessary for the protection of health and safety of the citizens and what agency of the federal government, the Commonwealth, or political subdivision thereof is to perform the project or activity or has ordered the project or activity to be performed. If the project or activity is approved by the director as an emergency, the approval shall include a description of the work to be allowed and the duration of the work and shall not include work beyond that necessary to abate the emergency. Any person that initiates an emergency response without prior approval shall file a written report within 30 days with the director detailing the work and blah, 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 and a description of any restoration that may be necessary to restore the site of the project or activity. I don't recommend an after the fact filing. So I think just starting the conversation with them would be the best first step.
Okay.
That's
like,
the sign, right? That's the sign that the meeting has gone on too long.
When it goes off and it's like dark and like scary in here, I'm like, whoa, it's late. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Oh,
Thank you.
Jeb.
Thank you all for
be in
your
touch.
time. Right. So with that, are we done, Cassie?
I have one more thing I want to talk to
Are
everyone
you
about.
sure?
I know, always. But this one's kind of crazy and interesting. So
I'm not
it
gonna
has to do.
start calling you Columbo.
Yeah, just one more thing.
More thing, ma'am.
I'm glad we all get that.
It's just so much is always
That's
going
how
on.
long we've been on the commission.
Okay, so this is in regards to, you may have heard that they are lifting the state of emergency in the state. And that is officially going to take effect on June 15th.
June.
Yeah,
Day
so
after
June.
our next meeting.
Exactly. But there's going to be, after that, if there's no other legislation passed, we have to go back to in-person meetings. There, you can't have a quorum through virtual participation. And so the city has put out some information about how they want to tackle this. And basically they want to start trying to do like a hybrid, essentially like, yes, commissioners can attend virtually. But yes, you'll have to have at least a quorum of people physically at the meeting location, which I guess would be, here at 50 Basin. And then also providing virtual access for the public. And so that would probably, I mean, this is more of a thing for me. I'm just going to have to probably, during the meetings, I'll be managing like I do now, admitting people and doing things like that, making sure that's shared on the screen. The big questions that have come up so far are, in terms of commissioner virtual participation, that can kind of become a logistical nightmare if like we set 4 people and then one person the night before the meeting figures out they can't come, and then suddenly we don't have quorum. So we're leaning more towards asking all commissioners come and plan to just be in person primarily. But if you find that like you're on vacation or you simply know you're not going to be able to get there physically, then like letting us know. And so like it's more an exception than the norm that commissioners would have remote participation.
We can
Just
go on
because-
vacation? You're telling us we can go on vacation?
if you can get away with it. But yeah, so you know what I mean? Like if we just strictly had 4 people, it's like, how do we decide who those 4 people are? And then how do I like manage potential changes? Like it's just, we're always on the edge of not having quorum if someone isn't able to make it. And then having to like shift things around suddenly. And then the other part of it was for the applicants. Can the applicants be virtual? Do we want to require that at least someone is physically there as a representative? These questions and the answers to them, you know, they're going to come from the city, like city council. They may be out of our control, but I wanted to ask you guys about it so I could say.
So what technology is the city going to have installed so that there can be engaged public participation from remote locales? So how, like if someone were to be participating virtually and they wanted to speak during a public comment period, how would they be able to engage in that way? I mean, I understand watching a live feed, but how would, you know, what would be the method or the steps by which they would be engaged, or the technology? And then if we were to allow, and I'm fully in support of, you know, applicants presenting remotely, selfishly, you know, how would that look? What would that, you know, I think it's much better when there's someone screen sharing a drawing and everyone has the same view of it, or if there's an opportunity to project it or have it on a large monitor in the room, as opposed to an easel that you have to be positioned properly to see, and you can't zoom in on that. You know, it's a set, it's real life, it's set scale. So like, what are those considerations? What are those accommodations going to look like if that's the case?
I don't have any specifics, but I have, you know, the similar question. I would think that they would need to have some kind of monitor installed so that you guys can see. Like my vision is that we'll be there physically, like in that room, like we used to be, and then I'll have my laptop and I'll be, you know, managing the Zoom, but then we'd have to have some kind of like TV or something so you can see what people are there, and then you can see what I'm projecting to everyone. It'll have the plans up there.
We've done that for online classes and such, and you can do it in a seamless way, but you have to have the technology, which means the city's going to have to do the buy-in to have that big screen that everyone who's in that room. And I agree that like having just the committee members in the room, and then as long as everyone has that access, like you're saying, Melissa, like to have everyone be able to see the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And then for people making comments, you know, my guess, like if we had to make it work tomorrow, like again, having the monitor, either we would have some kind of, you know, microphone that you all are speaking into, that it's getting projected into what people are experiencing through Zoom, and then that monitor would have audio and you would hear them through that. So, because there's a question of like the feedback, the audio feedback, it gets wacky. I would have my computer, which would also be there, would just be muted the entirety of the time.
Yeah, those exist. Like we have them like in the middle of a table for lab meetings and such.
Excuse me one moment.
It's okay.
But I agree that there has to be like the conversation of like how they're going to facilitate that, because we're probably not the only, you know, commission, committee, whatever, talking about this right now.
Exactly. But yeah, exactly. So hopefully like those logistical things, that's more the city's gonna have to figure it out. But then how do you guys feel about, even though in a technical sense, the only requirement is that 4 of you show up, how do you feel about that being the standard, that really come, like everybody planned to be there instead of,
you know, pros and cons, fewer people in the room. less of a burden, but we do also have hearings that continue over multiple meetings, and you're supposed to have the same members creating the quorum each time. And so, I guess what I would, on the one hand, if that weren't so much a factor, I would say let's come up with a rotation working around what people know of their lives and schedules for the foreseeable future, for the calendar. But at the same time, I mean, I know, if the work I do during the day requires that I attend a meeting on behalf of a paying client on a Monday night, that is where I need to be. I think Dan and Julie, and I can't speak for others necessarily the same way, but we're all kind of in the same industry, and that wins. So, that's not planned out months and months and months in advance.
Right.
So, best laid plans. I mean, we didn't know Michael wasn't going to be available this evening, and I certainly hope he's all right. And if he's here, that's great. I just can't see him.
Yeah, right.
Can I ask, will everyone be 2 weeks post-vax by the time this goes into effect? I don't know what that meeting date would be, late June?
I will be by this Friday, so
I will be by Wednesday.
I'm very happy.
Yeah, so I'm if we're all post-vax, I'm happy to commit to coming in.
In terms of public attendance, I don't know if the city will still require masks inside the building, for people who potentially aren't vaccinated or whatever. So there's like a lot of details still to be sorted out. This is helpful for me. I can try to be representative during the discussion, and just let you guys know what ends up being decided or what ends up happening. But
and also what space will be available to us, where, I mean, I don't think, even if we're all fully vaccinated, that, I'm completely comfortable being crammed around, the standard conference room table, and, would a larger space that allowed a little more elbow room be available to us? Like, as much as, it was a bit awkward to be all on display up in the second floor area, it certainly did allow for a little more social distancing.
Right.
So is that, I didn't quite get the reason to only have 4 of us in person rotating. Is it the room size, room occupancy downstairs, or just?
that's
That
just
quorum, to
the
have
minimum
in-person
for quorum.
Yeah.
Well, so why not, we could have more in person, right? So, so it'd be just kind of like going back to normal.
Pretty much is what I think is like what is being suggested, is like, because a lot of people, I think the reason I'm phrasing it all this way and asking about it this way is because a lot of people just really like the remote access. It's a lot easier. You don't have to like come here. And some people might just be like, well, let's just, let's make it so that the least amount of people possible have to come, but that makes it a lot logistically harder. So I would prefer if everyone's okay with it, it would be great and helpful to me that people can plan on, we're going to try to kind of go back to normal, people coming in. And then the exception would be like, if you need to, you can remotely participate.
Right. So and I'm sorry if I missed this or just blanked on it. So if we have the minimum quorum necessary in person, other members of the commission can participate remotely.
Yeah. Yep.
Which
So
I think
then
has
we're not really
always been true. It's just not, it's never been feasible.
Right. It certainly hasn't been facilitated.
Well, I think it's worth being a bit of a squeaky wheel in this and saying that, these are considerations that it's time to kind of think about having those platforms available, because if there's other meetings that have to happen for city council and such that use those same rooms, they should set them up.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Okay. So you'll let us know how the discussions go, Cassie?
I will. I'll let you know if any legislation comes down from the state either that changes things. We've got a good chunk of time until we have to get it totally sorted, but
I kind of have the feeling that some legislation is expected just from people I've talked to, but
yeah, MACC, I don't know if you all get these emails. One of the things there is stuff, there is like legislation like trying to go through. So
Yeah, lots of people, myself included, appreciate being able to participate in meetings from the comfort of their own home, and in other instances, not having to drive 2 hours one way for 15 minutes to turn around and drive back. I always argue it's, environmentally more conscientious.
yeah, for consultants, they could go to like 5 meetings in one night, if they need to, which I don't know
And
if that's
five is pushing it.
but still they can like boom, boom, boom.
Two or
we know.
three has been tested. It's not recommended.
Sounds terrible.
I'm sorry, I don't even know open that door. I'm sorry.
I did one meeting. They didn't have a video conference option. It was all by phone, and it was like I would not recommend that option anyway.
Wow.
I've had both going at the same time, the phone, the in-person, and then like 2 people on computers. It's just like,
Wow.
That's tough when you're calling everyone on a phone, or some people on a phone. It's a very, even virtually with the video on, it's difficult to pick up on cues and inadvertently talk over people, or not so inadvertently. All right, so you'll keep us posted, Cassie. Let me know if I can. I provided 2 names for natural heritage to you and Dan.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
So I think that's all we've got.
Yes, that really is it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. And would anyone care to make a motion to adjourn to June 24th, 2021 at 6 p.m.?
June
June
24th.
14th.
June 14th?
Yes.
Can we just change the meeting date? I am done.
Yeah.
We almost made a devastating mistake there.
Revise, June 14th?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. August,
Aye.
Yusa,
Aye.
Buttrick,
Hi.
Ryan,
Aye.
Teffer,
aye.
Whittemore, not present. Motion carries. Thank you all so much.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye.
Go on.
Care.